Hi guys, welcome to another cool film. It's been a while since I released some films, and I apologize for that. I had some issues with my laptop, but the problem is gone. We are okay now. All right, so I want us to in this cool film we're going to look at something very interesting, and sure we've seen it across multiple platforms, but as engineers here at Cool Films, we like to implement solutions or solve problems. So there's this feature or service that probably if you are using WhatsApp, you're using Instagram, you're using LinkedIn, you probably come across, or even YouTube, you probably come across, and you're like, how does this work, or how is this possible? So that's it about this cool film. We want to just go straight into the cool film and see how um, cool films engineers were able to implement it. All right, so let's just go straight into the code film. Let's just get started. All right. So this code film is titled Mention Service. So example, probably you're commenting on a platform and you go by saying I love and you have the at Spotify. I love Spotify because I like to stream a lot of music. Yeah, so we want to know how you're able to do this at Spotify, whereby when you go ahead and add or you mention Spotify, you're able to get Spotify's attention. So the whole thing is a mention service. So in this code, we want to look at the back end of the mention service and just for you to see how we're able to implement it. So this is just the back end side. All right, so as we said earlier, there are some awesomeness that are in the real world. If we use Instagram, if you use YouTube, if you use WhatsApp, if you use LinkedIn, you've probably seen this feature, this service that these platform owners have provided so that if you as a person you're trying to make a comment, you're able to mention that person for that person to also know that he has been mentioned. So in this code, we just want to see how is it being implemented. So before I go into the technical details, especially from a backend perspective, I want us to go and check out some of the awesomeness in the real world so that we're able to know that we're able to see how or we're able to understand what we have over here. So let's just take some time. Let's move to the real world and let's enjoy what they have. So we're going to do that first. Now I'm sliding to my mobile device. All right, so let's go ahead and check some of the awesomeness that are in the real world. I'll start with my one of my favorite platforms, which is um, Instagram. So on Instagram, there's something that looks interesting. Love to communicate, ladies. It's trying to talk about career or an opportunity. So if you think you know somebody that will be interested, you go ahead, then you mention the person. Once you mention that person, you draw the attention of that person to that content. So I'll just choose this entity and I'll hit the send button. All right, so once it gets mentioned, then once you go there, you load all the details of that person. All right, so that's just for you to see that it actually works. So any content you see, you can mention that person, you can mention that friend, that loved one, and even if you also want to mention organizations too, it's also possible. So you want to mention organization, there's a new way of sending money, and then you want that organization to be aware, or you want to draw their attention. You can just go ahead, then you just mention. You go ahead and you mention the organization. Okay, it seems something. Let's just Yeah, so you go ahead and then you mention the organization, probably let's just say Star West. Then you hit the send, then it goes. So you can mention anybody that you want to
mention any entity. So that's just for you to know that it works. And there's a technical term for it. I'm using organizations, persons, but there's one word you can use to encapsulate every object orientation. So it depends on what we are doing. So if you also saw not Telegram, let's go to LinkedIn. LinkedIn. If you come to LinkedIn too, and you see an opportunity that you want to draw their attention, or you see a content that you want to draw the attention of someone, you can go ahead and hit it. So says learn an arm today. It's more of a program. So you want just someone to be aware, you go ahead and you hit the at option. I don't say button, but you hit the at, then you mention that person. Right, so that's just for you to know that it exists on multiple platforms, and it's a very interesting feature because whatever you come across on the internet or on the World Wide Web, provided that person exists on the platform, you can actually draw their attention. You don't have to pick a phone call and call that person. No, you just go ahead and mention the person. And then you can also check if you're doing WhatsApp group chats. For example, here too, you can go ahead and hit the at, and it gives you the list of um, entities or all persons that are tied to that group ID. There's the technical term. We will look at the technical term in the code film, but this is just for you to appreciate that it's 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 possible or it's being done, or you can that's it on the real world. And also one thing too is that if you want to also consider organizations, you ask yourself, how do you consider everybody? So they are using name here. So it depends on what you want to use to mention. A good example is if you are doing that of the WhatsApp, probably you want to consider everybody. So if you are doing that of the WhatsApp, if you do at and we have an organization, are you going to use their first name or last name? Or is it their ID? These are all technical terms that we'll see later on the code film. So they are just using name. So with the name, every entity or object has a name. All right. So that's just for understanding or seeing what exists in the real world. So you can check across multiple platforms and you see how this feature exists. All right.
Yeah, so we are back here. So we've just seen how it's being used on Instagram, being used on WhatsApp, and being used on LinkedIn. The same applies to YouTube as well. You can also check it out. So the question is, the challenge is that's the problem. So we all have friends, loved ones on the platform. So how do we get this feature so that when we see something, we can actually mention them on the platform? We want to make a phone call, call maybe um your friend. Let's take example. You don't want to call John, like, hey John, I've seen this, check it out. You just want to implement that feature so that when John goes on that platform, or even when he's offline or when he comes back online, he's being notified that he has been mentioned. So that's the whole concept about the mention service, being able to draw the attention of someone on the platform. So the question is, can we do this in a just then the thing is, yes, we can. So we're going to look at some of the features that will help us do this. So in the continuation of this film, we'll be looking at entity, we'll be looking at SQL, and we're looking at API. So I'm going to take my time and really go deep into how understanding of these things makes it possible for us to create a mention service. And this is just for the backend side. So let's just go straight. Understand the entity, understand SQL, and understand the API. And then we'll be able to appreciate just the backend. Then later on, we'll also look at the front end. So yes, we can. We can actually do this. And that's why we are here at CodeFilm. So let's get ready and let's just go straight into the technical details. All right, so let's go ahead and let's get straight into the technical details. So we'll start with the understanding of the entity, SQL, and also the API. But let's start with the entity first. So first things first, let's open our database. I'm using the Beaver client to authenticate into a Postgres database. So we are saying yes, we can. So let's understand the entity bit first. Let me know how we're going to implement this or how we implemented it. All right. So let's see if it's up now. All right. So it's up. Okay, that's good. So let's go straight. So first on our list is entity. So someone say what's an entity? So an entity is the object in the real world that you want to model. And there's a term that's being used mostly when it comes to computing, especially with interaction with the computer. And that term is called user. And I repeat again, the term or the word is user. User, user. So you have a user on a platform. So if you check if you looked at the awesomeness that we looked at, every account now created on the platform had a user. There's a user. So every account owner is a user of the platform. So for every user, he has some attributes of the user. And instead of recalling it user specifically, when we want to start, we call it an entity. So it's an entity we've identified, but the term or the word you want to use is user. So when I was saying loved ones, friends, it's all user. We're referring to a user. So we go to the database and let's look at the user. Let's just look at the schema of the user to understand the user bit first. So we'll do this and call our view as diagram. All right, so this is fantastic. So we'll go ahead and zoom in first. So this is our user. So we have an entity, we have a table that we're calling users. And for all the users, we have some attributes to the user. Some prefer to give it a noun, so a singular noun, some to do it plural nouns. There are times I go with the plural, there are sometimes I go with the singular in terms of naming the table. Because at the end of the day, it's going to be a list of entities or a list of attributions or classifications for whatever you want to model. So sometimes you may want to go with the just the singular so that we all know that it's a table of user or users, sorry. But if you also want to go the plural to that one is also there. You choose one and stick with it. Sometimes it's just nice to know that this is a user. So we have a list of users. So that was just by the way. So for every user, we have attributes for the user. The user has a bio, he has an email address, he has a first name, full name, last name, and the feature we want to do is mention. So we have added a mention tag for the user. We have a mobile number for every user, a name, national ID, other names, passwords, and then for our uh, challenge, we will have a site. So we created we have a site attribute for the user. Later on, we understand the site. We have the user ID, we have the username, user reference number, we have image, the user's image. So these are all the attributions for the user. And then we also have the ID because you have to be able to uniquely identify every user in the database. These are database principles, a primary key for every user, a unique key. So in this attributions for a user, the takeaways we want to take is the mention tag and the site because that's how we are going to be able to implement our feature. So is this attributions that we've given to the user that makes it possible because we are going to do this from the backend side. So we added a column called mention tag and we also have a site, just these two things. So we realize that when we're checking out the awesomeness and reward, once we mention the user, what goes ahead is that once you click on that user, you can be redirected to the user's profile or landing page or whatever resource he wants you well, he wants you to be acknowledged with when you initiate a request to him. So these are all the attributions of the user. So this is just the beginning. This is just from the database perspective. And also the image, for instance, someone may ask, how is it possible that we are storing an image in database? I really want to go much into that technical details because there are so many ways of storing images. Some have ways of storing, some store it in a database, some create, some use third-party providers, some store it in a bucket. It's just creativity. So depending on the problem at hand, probably you want to do some separation of concerns, then you create a table for it. Then you have a user, every user has an image. It's up to you. But that's not for this code film. Just what I want you to know is that we have an image column for the user and we are loading order for a user. So that's just the takeaway. So we are done with the attributes for the user, and this was just using the ER diagram just to make our work simple. So that's just for the user. So we've looked at the user side. Now let's look understand the SQL bit of it, or how we are going to implement this. So I'm going to slide to the code section. Code. So let me open let's get our ID up. Okay, Eclipse. No, I think I will. Let's launch from our taskbar. So it's a gradual step. We are gradually getting there. So we've understood the user. So if we've been struggling to understand or find a word that classifies all interactions with the computer, we'll say it's currently in use. Okay, then I have one, okay, an instance open. Then all you need to know that you have to use, there's a term called user. Probably you've been using it sparingly. Example, you say end user or a user. But if you don't understand how um, relevant or impactful it is in terms of your development, you just fumble when you want to do something because you don't know if you say loved ones. Just imagine if we are creating a app and we say loved ones. What's loved ones? But we want to have a list of what users, or a list of what user. If not a list of users to someone say then what? Maybe someone to say persons. Fine. It's all up to you, but make sure that it makes sense. Because out of users, this entity we can have subclasses, we can have students, we can have managers, we can have uh, employees, we can have so many subclasses from this entity. So this is just a generic term we are using, users. All right, so that was just by the way. So let's go to ID and see something. All right, so in this Go phone, we created a service called mention service. So mention service is an API, a REST API that is going to help us to, in other words, query for that user when we go with this mention tag. So what do you mean by this? What I'm trying to say is that every user, when he was being created on the platform, we look at the REST part of it, the API. They all, based on the attributions, they all came with some details. I came with my first name, I came with my full name, I came with my last name, I came with my mobile number, I came with my name, I came with my national ID, I came with other names, I created a password, and the site probably, it could be that I provided it or I didn't provide it. Like the user ID could be that the system generated it for me. The username too could be that the system generated for me, I provided it. Or the user reference number to the system generated it for me, but the image I provided it. And the bio I provided it. But the mention tag I didn't provide it. It could be that I can provide it, or it could be that the system can generate it for me. But what's important is that the mention tag column has to be present. That's the attribution for the user, and that's what causes this to work. Because at the end of the day, we want to search or query or find a particular user by using some particular word field. So let's just go straight and check something out here. I think I have some data in my database. Oh, all my data is gone. No worries. We'll create some users, or we'll create some users in our service, in our database. And once we create the users, everything will make sense. So let's just go ahead and start with the code. So we go into the mention service. Then we have the mention controller. That's for the controller. That's exposing the service to the world with endpoints. Then we have the database. So let's go to the DB and let's check the schema out. So we realize that we have this DB, this class called user. It's very important that you understand user. You have user and then you have the mention tag. So this is the mention tag. So it's by the mention tag that you'll see that every user, once you go ahead and create yourself, will give you a mention tag. So it's in the database that we are going to give the mention tag for that particular user. We use a Postman to do that. So just Just accept it. So that's the field for the mention tag. All right. So we are done with that. Now the question is, how do we query for the user? So in the query side, there are two ways of doing that. One of the ways to use SQL operator. And the SQL operator we can use is like operator. So the like operator is an operator that if you want to query for a particular user, like operator, it comes with specifications. So if you want to search for all entities, you go with a specification whereby you start with a wildcard and you say search for all columns or all entities which start with this wild starting with this wildcard in or that contains the name Samuel. So based on the boundaries you set for the like operator, it's going to query for you. And it's an operator. You don't have to create this. You don't have to create this. It's an operator. So we'll look at that. We'll look at that in the database section. When we go there. So you appreciate it after creating some users. So when we create users, so you can use an operator, but for this case, out of my development experience, this is just the code for using the like operator. So if I uncomment this code now, right, you realize that I was using the um like operator here to do that work. If you don't see it, probably it's not clear now. You can actually see it clearly here. We'll check it out in the database, so don't worry. So you realize that if I do the user repository, if you are conversant with software engineering principles about data DAOs, we are calling find the user by the mention tag, like, then we pass the keyword, and then we have the boundaries for it. And this is a feature by using Spring JPA. So if you're a Spring JPA fan, you understand that. But that's not the it's an ORM. So that's not the takeaway for this code. From what you have to know is that we have to implement how we find the user using the user ID so that we be able to query for a range of users. You saw in the mobile demonstration that once we hit the @ sign, it searches for every user as far as possible. It doesn't narrow its search to maybe users starting with a character of only J or K. Once we hit the @ it starts searching for almost everybody. And that one is a query. We have to use that using SQL. So in our implementation, because of some front-end concerns, we didn't go with that. We actually had to build a stream, find all, and then we did some filtering. And out of that filtering, we check if the user ID dimension tag contains what we are searching for, and we return the list of it. So that's how we are getting our users. So this is the Java way we went through. We didn't go through the SQL way. That's because some challenges we will have on the front end and also on the back end. The front end challenge is that when we go with the like operator, because we haven't yet entered the front end session, because we're using some Ajax, when we go with the like operator and we're typing it, sometimes the data set we'll be getting from our database, standardizing it to get that image because of the image section, it becomes a problem. So I had to think of a way of, or we had our own interactions to find out how we can go ahead and find another solution to that. So it works. What's important is working. So you just have to know that it's working. So this is how we built it for the backend to fetch the query. So this is just the query bits, and this is the SQL bits. And when we are done, we have to create an endpoint to expose the users so that you can actually query for the user. So when you come to this endpoint, mention the mention API, we are searching for users and we go by their mention tag. Once you pass the mention tag of the user, we go ahead and mention the user by the mention tag. So the question is, how are you mentioning the users? Because I know you are mentioning them, but how are you mentioning them? And that's because when the users create themselves, they will give themselves a mention tag. We are just going to do a query. That's what we are going to do. And the rest is just the endpoint and the service. So this is the API that helps us to do that. It's a mention API. And we just what mention them. I'm sure by now everything's is almost clear. So we are done with that. So that's just by the way. So just we've just looked at how it works from the backend then to the code, the source code. Now let's actually go ahead and create users. When we create users, let's go ahead and see how we are searching for the users. Then we look at how the users have been created. So just step by step. So let's just now create the users because we want to mention them. So I'll slide to Postman. When I come to Postman, I have two APIs available. I have the resource authentication and we also have the mention. We'll go into that one later. For now, let's check out the resource authentication users. So if I go ahead and hit body, I want to create users. I want to create users. So my resource authentication says if you want to create a users, that's because I have an authentication service I'm building. So all my users are being located in my authentication database or my authentication, the platform I'm building for my authentication service. I'm hosting all my users there. So for every user that I want to create or every general user I want to create for all possible applications I'll be building, I want to store their I want to have their user details and their images. So the user DTO has a request, and the request is the username, the name, the first name, the last name, the other names, their national ID, and it goes on and on. So what we have to understand is that the name is generic. You see, on a platform, all users will not be persons. All users could be, some users can be organizations, some users can be persons. So based on the platform's um the platform's functions, you determine if there should be a name or not. Instagram for like this, it's not only human beings are on Instagram, organizations also exist on Instagram. So in that case, some organizations are you going to ask for their first name or last name? There has to be a key field that helps to distinguish them. So it could be name. So if I'm creating a user, I can give any name. So let's just go ahead and create some users. So the first user, let's create a user. I'll start with let's use the name William. So we have William Doe. So William Doe. All right. And then we have other names. Maybe let's change this and let's make it um Jackson. So William Jackson Doe. He has a national ID. He passes national ID. GH 2345. It's a national ID. He has an email address. I'll let Postman generate this for me. We have a random bio. Let's keep a bio. Let's have a bio for this. No, let's have a bio. So William Doe is being created. He says that I have a great um a great desire to solve problems. All right, so this is you those by and he has a mobile number. His password is St. John, and he has a name. So the name he wants to be identified with may not be the William Doe. He may want to call it software software genius. So anybody with the name software genius we know that it's William Doe. So once that name is taken, you can't take that name. So we can implement all that using unique fields and unique constraints. But right now, what I want us to understand is the mention service. So we have William Doe, and then we're going to create William Doe. So if William Doe has a picture, just select files. Let's just choose any picture here, Pete. Then we go ahead and we send a request. So let's send a request. Oops. Alright, so it seems there's a problem. Let's actually check and see if the service is up. So let me do my command prompt here, terminal. So we want to, if you haven't watched the networking class, you can watch it. So we now know some of the use of nest start. Let's just do a nest start and see if we can find and see if that port 8080 is up. Let's just see. Alright, so port 8080 is not up. So we have to turn it up. Someone say, how do I know? If not, let's just do a telnet to 8080 at the localhost IP address at that port. Okay, so telnet is not recognized here. Okay, this is Windows PowerShell. Um, let's let me have another terminal. Let's use get bash. Probably I have to enable it. So let's go with telnet again. Then we'll do 127.0.0.18080. Since telnet command not found, I'll have to install telnet. Oh, okay. So if I can't telnet, let's go with the normal Windows command. Let's try that one too and see. Okay, telnet 127.0.0.18080. So telnet is not recognized. Alright, so let's enable telnet. Let's go here. Telnet. So let's enable telnet, and I'm sure that it should go. Alright, so after this, it should go. So let's just get started again. Let's try again. All that we're just trying to do that we want to know why we're getting that response that is connection with you. So we want to do a telnet. So we are trying to connect to the application that port, and it says that cannot open connection to the host connection field. So it could be that the service is not up. So let's start the authentication service. If you haven't watched the network series, you can go ahead and watch the networking series. It helps you to appreciate some of these commands that comes in handy when you are working as a developer, and it has started coming in handy. All right, so now let's go and let's start our service. All right, so our service is authentication service. So we'll start it from here. Let's bring it. Not the size. Okay. So it seems our service is up. So we go ahead and we telnet again. And we are not seeing an error, so we are happy. We are comfortable. If you didn't want to go with telnet, you can also go with ping. But ping is for the IP address. Ours we're on the host. So we don't need to ping the host. Fine, we know that our host is up, so we don't tell the port, so we just go with the telnet to the port. Alright, so we are fine now. So now let's go ahead and create William. So we'll go send a request and then we get 201 created. So it says user was successfully created. So you have an ID for William, you have a user reference for William, you have a username for William, which was generated by the system. William too can provide it if William doesn't want to use the system to generate the username. We have, it all depends on the requirement of the application. We have an image, and later we'll look at how the image is being stored. By it's being stored, then we have the first name, the last name, the national ID, his full name, and then the email address. What I wanted to take away is the mention tag. You realize that William didn't provide the mention tag, but the mention tag was given to William, and it's being done by taking, if you look at it carefully, it is William and Doe. So it's the first name and the last name. That creates the mention tag. And that even creates the user ID. So in this scenario, in this development, we are using the user ID to perform the query or the key to get the user. So in other words, the mention tag is equal to the user ID, but with an @ symbol. If that's not the case for your development, probably based on the requirement, you don't want to go with that. You can actually say that let the mention tag be equal to the name. So for every mention tag, it is the name that we use. So if you check on Instagram, if you check on WhatsApp, for instance, you realize that you can have a first name, you can have a last name. Later on, when you see this in the mobile demo, you realize that the name field is is what probably you've just inserted there. But the username, the first name and last name is for you. But the name is generic, it's broad. So you can even have a company name here. But you can still mention them. But as it stands now, we are mentioning by the user ID. So that's where the way we are mentioning them. Alright, and then we have a site. Then we have his bio. All right, so we've been able to create William. Let's create another user. Let's create another user. Let's create Jessica, and she's Jessica 1B, and then she has Jackson too. Let's just change the ID here. We have the random email. We have some number. Let's just put it by 4. Her password not be St. John, but maybe St. Peter or Johnson. And she says that she is a great, uh, um, I am a great, she says she's a great front-end developer. So she's a front-end developer. All right. And then my username, we don't want, it can be random. Probably for this case, she'll provide her own username. So the username she wants to use is just, just just front end. So we say just front end. And then the name she wants to use now will also be the same username. So just front end. Alright, so let's go ahead and load our image for her too. Select the file, Jessica, and create it too as well. So Jessica Homeby has been created, her image has been saved, her name and her username has been captured, and then her mention tag has been equated uh, to her user ID. Alright, so that's it. So we've been able to create another user. Let's go ahead and create some more. Let's just create some more now. So we've had Peter, we've had Jessica. Let's have Paul. Let's call this Paul Samson. Jack, he won't be Jackson again. Let's make it Paul in a tree name, Kuku Samson. Then his password will be let's keep something simple, and it's just a password. Then let's have a bio of at just say an engineer at heart. All right, and his name he just want to be called Paul, but his username he wants it to be engineer Paul. All right, and that would also be nice here if it's also the same engineer Paul. Yeah, so the name will be Engineer Paul. His username will also be Engineer Paul. It could be any of them, Engineer Paul or Paul. Let's just, we have had one instance, but I think this name is nice because it makes it unique. But if not that's not the case, you can just say Paul. That doesn't spoil anything. Let's change some ID parameters here. Let's just go ahead and we don't want to drift too much from why we are here. And then we also have this mention tag being equated to Paul Samson. All right. So we are fine now. We have a site. We are okay now. So let's go. We've created our users. Now we've created our users and we've created our users on our platform. So the next thing will be that we will search for them using the mention tag. And then the mention tag has already been, as you said, it's already been captured here by the um, schema redesigned. And the question we ask ourselves is that how is the mention tag being created? So we'll go to our authentication service and then we'll see how we are implementing the user creation. All this is just by the way. The real work is when we go to the front end, but we have to understand the back end. So here's how we are seeing the user was successfully created, and this is the endpoint that creates the users. All right. So let's go into where it says save the users or create. So we'll go to open implementation. Realize that we capture all the fields from the request DTO. Then let's just look for the mention tag. So it says the created user set the mention tag to what? The @. So we concatenate the @ with what? The user ID. So this is where we can change anything. So based on requirement, before I do that, let me just do this. I don't want my database to flash. So I'm going to set this to update the DM. So just to update. Yeah. So it doesn't flash. Yeah, it's to go ahead and clear all the data in the database. Let me just confirm that we have some new data. So we actually created them, but we didn't look at the data has been created. So let's confirm now. Let's refresh. All right, so that's perfect. You realize that the data was created. It's always good to check your data to see if it has been created because the response, you can always be sure that the response is blocked. Yeah, so let's update it. So this is how we are doing insert mention tag at then they get the user ID. So it's here that we can change whatever we want to do. We can actually call this, the mention tag will no longer be the user ID, but it could be getting, and that one makes it generic. So you can mention a business, you can mention whoever you want to mention. All right, so that's just by the way. All right, so you realize that everything is working now for the backend because we have been able to implement this. So these are our storing them, and then for the user profile URL, you just have you replace the user ID with the get mentioned tag. So we have the profile URL, and that will create the site. As we said, the site. I don't want to go into this. When we go to the front end, we understand this later on. But this just tells you how the user is being captured. So this is the backend. The role implementation is the field we added when we started with the schema. That's the mention tag. So this is how we identify each user. And then the other work comes in when we are trying to query for the users. Remember, we said that in querying for the users, we want to find or streamline by seeing if it contains the user tag. So we've looked at the API, we've looked at the SQL, we've looked at the entity. So now that we have users, let's now go into our database and just see some work with the SQL. So if for now, let's say I want to query for a user, let's say I want to just query by the name William. Let's just do this on open SQL and generate a select sample select. So copy it, copy. Then let's have a script, a SQL script. Generate wait, sorry. Um SQL editor, sorry. Open SQL script. Oh no, sorry. Where do I have this view to pull out my SQL window? Uh, SQL editor. Open SQL console. Open SQL script. No open. Yes, it has to be SQL editor. New SQL script. Yeah, sorry. So let's paste it here. Then see where. Let's search by. We said we search by name. So let's say where name is equal to William. Okay. Let's just confirm the query. If it works, if you know why it's not working. So it says column William does not exist. Column William does not exist. Right, let's try. Let's see what the issue is in it. William. Uh, let's pick a name that exists. Let's see William, software genius. And let's do it again. Where if that then we'll have to classify them. We'll look at that one later. Okay, so this column software engineer does not exist. I'm sure it's coming from so do select um where is this running? Okay, let's do from public users where I want to add the tables. So do users.name where users.name. So let's do this. Okay, we're still having the same issue. I don't want to go ahead and say aliasing, so I'm coming. Let's just try this again. Let's do a simple post. So let's start from our users first. So let's see if we can actually do this first. All right, so we can actually do this. And let's go ahead and say where name is equal to. Let's uh let's just do name. Okay, how's this name first? Let's just do this. Right, fine. Then let's go with this double quotes too as well. So I'm sure it's coming from double quotes. Yeah, so it's coming from the double quotes. Right, so let's go with the single quotes. Sometimes I get lost. But I think this Postgresql, so it won't allow you to go with this double quotes. So we fix it. So this is just front end. So it's okay. So that's just searching by the name. So we realize that just by passing the name, we're able to fetch all the data for Jessica. So this is just a query, and this is a narrow search. So we want to broaden. So we say, so let's start from users where name is equals to username. We say like, and then here we define our regex. So we say like, when we say star, say star, then maybe there are rules for the like operator. So I'll just go like A. I'll just start with this first. So we want to search for where names are like A. That's you're starting with A. Anything that contains A. All right, so it doesn't find anything for us. All right, so with our regex system, our like operator is not functioning. So let's do star A, then let's do this. Just A. Let's just do this. Just A. We know we have some Jessica in the database. Okay. Right, then let's bound with now. Let's see. So you want to search for anything that contains something like Jessica. That's what we're trying to say here. So it's working now. So it's the rules we're applying to the like operator. So there are rules to it. I'm not going to go into that because I myself I don't put it in my head. I just use it when I need to use it. So if not that's the case, we can go with just A now. I think anything that starts with A. I think this the roof that anything that starts with A. Let's not picking. Let's start with A. Let's end it, the boundaries. Yeah. So let's close this again. So good. So the search here means that it's searching for anything that contains A. So in the name. So if you look at the names that we have here, software genius has A, Paul 2 has A. So you probably have to go with the rules for the like operator because I use it and I check on when I'm using it. I just go ahead and use it. Like I check the reference and I see what I want to do, then I go ahead. But you can always check online to find out what you want. So this is how we're going to query them. So this is just for the backend side. So now we have the API to query. So if we have the API to query, we'll go, we'll look at the front end video and we'll see how we implemented the front end bit of it. But just by the way, this is just for the backend. And then we will not be using the name operator to search. We'll be using the mention tag. Is a mention tag, as we said, is a mention tag that is going to spool all our records for us. So where mention tag, that's the column, sorry. Then we'll go with and where the mention tag, but and then we'll go with let's say query and star, then whatever boundaries you want to define for it. So if we are using a mention tag, this is how we're going to search. So this is what makes it possible for us to this is what makes it possible for us to search for our users. Is the like operator concept. And I explained earlier that we're not going to use a like operator in for this particular case, but we're using a refined way. But it stems from this. It stems from this. So there are cases you want to use a like operator And there are cases too, you also want to write your own. So now we are writing our own by building a stream. And with the stream, we filter, and with the filtering, we check if it contains the user ID. So the key is the contains. It's like the like operator context we're using here. Then we do to list. Then we get a list. You can actually check more contains, what it does, and then also the like operator. So this is just for the backend. And the API too is available. Sorry, the API is available for you to call. All you just need to have to know how to call this API. So let's just test the API before going to the front end. Let's just test the API. So let's have a copy. Let's use this for the API bit. I think here we have it here. Let's just call one and let's check if we're in the right context. I think it's a mention service. So let me go ahead and copy everything mention. Let's see if this. So it goes with API v1. That's the standard directory indexing into the API. Then what directory are we looking for? Or what resource? We are trying to locate mention API for users. And then paste it here. Then we could mention tag. Alright, so we have some mention tags in the database. So if you do it at, you should get a list because of the query we are writing. Alright, so it says 404 not found. So we have to check and see if mention service is actually located on this port because it's not found on this. It's not found in 8080, which is the resource, the authentication service. So we have to change the port. Check the port. Okay, 8070. This authentication service, sorry. Let's check mention service. Let's check the property file for mention service. So mention service is 8084. Alright, so let's go with 8084. We'll copy it and paste it here. Alright, so we are getting this, which means that the service is not up. So let's use our network command tools to check. So let's start -a on find stream into 80. Let's see if all 80s are up. So all 80s is only 8080 that is up. So let's start for 8084. Let's run the service. Save anything. We don't want to spoil our code. Yeah, so so it says starter mention service application. So now let's hit the endpoint again. So we are just starting with at. And so it says request method is post. So let's check it, our directory here. Let's see what mention controller says. So we check from our outline control mention user is get mapping. So let's go with get. Alright, good. So list of users by mention tag at. It gives us the users in a list. So we have 3 users. So you have this one response, another response, and this a third response. So it's giving us all the 3 users in the database. So if we keep on narrowing our search, just go with the mention tag just hit. It just gives us only Jessica as a single response. And that's because of the like operator implementation that we have done in our code. But we are not using the like operator, we are using contains, and I've explained this earlier already. So this is how it's querying for it. So using the contains and the filtering. All right, so that's it for the implementation of the API. You've seen how the API works, and you've seen how the like operator works. Yeah, you've seen how the like operator works with the at and without the symbol. If you also remove this too, it also has its own rules it also obeys. So where mention tag is like at, it's not returning anything for you. So you have to, I'll leave a reference to a like operator, but the keyword is a like operator. So if you bound this for the wildcard, it tells you start anything that's found within this boundary and to query for you. All right. So that's just by the way for the backend for the mention. So it's the front end that makes it really interesting. So in the front end video too, we also look at some small, just a little backend in terms of the like operator. Because I think we have to look at it again. But right now we just look at the backend. So this is the whole backend full film for the mention service. Right. So um without saying much, I'll say that we've understood the entity, we've understood the SQL bit of it, and we've understood the API bit of it. So the next one, we'll look at the front end bit of it. All right. Thank you for sticking with me. If you have any questions, you can drop it in the comment section.